Good morning and welcome to the Friday Education Learning Slot. For those that don't know me, I'm Cheryl Andrew, the founder of Step by Step Listening, and this is our community committed to managing our critic so that we can learn to listen to ourselves and each other without judgment. Why do we do that? Because then we get to do more of what we love. We can delegate and ask for help for the stuff we don't. We haven't got that critic that's saying, oh, you should know how to do this or you should be able to do it yourself. And we can ditch the critic that says, we can't do that. So welcome. It's now coming up towards the end of 2018 in some people's minds. And I want to talk about that time monster. How many of you have got to that point now where you're on the 16th of November, you've still got a month and a half in 2018, and you're already starting to park decisions thinking, oh, wait, I'll deal with that in January. I'll deal with that in January. That's absolutely okay if it's a conscious decision. You're consciously deciding to change when you think about things. If you're doing it without even consciously being aware why you're doing it and whether it works for you, that's where the time monsters can start to sap your energy, start to take away your dreams. And I want to share with you today just a story that I've had with a client this week that's really kind of gone, that's why it all works. So good morning, Lorna. Please do tell me about your time monster. Does it have a shape or size? Where is it? Let's get to know your time monsters. Mine, as you might know, I'll put a picture of my friendly time monster in the bottom. He's my friend. He tends to tap me on the shoulder and let me know if I'm not saying on purpose, I'm not aligned with what I want to do. But sometimes he comes right around the front and he shouts at me and says, stop! And sometimes I absolutely need to stop. Sometimes I really haven't been listening to my body. I haven't been listening to my own needs. I haven't been listening sometimes to people around me. But sometimes the reason my time monster is shouting at me is because it's now running on old data. And I forgot to tell the time monster that I can do things faster, that I'm stronger, that I'm more capable. And so he is giving me advice based on old information about me. And therefore, that information is feedback I need to question instead of just listening to it verbatim and thinking everything the time monster says is true. So today, I really want you to start to question, what kind of time monster do you have? Where is the time monster? If you could draw or represent your time monster, pop it in a picture and put it into the comments. I'd love to see that. But I want you to talk about, because I want to share this story with you. I was with a client yesterday in the clarity retreat, and I'd cancelled October's clarity retreat because of our family bereavement, and my children needed to have the space, so I wasn't prepared to let my home out. So I made the decision not to run the retreat last month. And the person who came, so she missed a session last month, and so we hadn't seen each other for 8 weeks. And she said, oh, it's like a pattern. So I want you to notice patterns. She said, I've been here before. It's like I can't see past the end of the week. And I talk about her in the book, the Manager Critic book. And what she discovered is that when her husband, first husband passed away, she was, as he was getting poorlier and poorlier and the days were getting less and less, she stopped thinking about a month. Or, I can't think past a week, can't think past a day, can't think past an hour. And what she'd done is stopped planning in advance. So she came on the Do Delegate or Ditch program probably 2 or 3 years ago. And we looked at her planning model, how she plans at her best, and her perception of time. And that's when she worked out that she was only being able to sort of imagine 1 week ahead. And within the 2-day program, she managed to stretch that to a 3-year plan, which then meant she started project managing her clients better. She started saying yes and no to projects because she could perceive what time she had in the future. It meant she started booking holiday in first and then booked the clients around it. It even meant that she could actually get around to moving house. So she actually moved from the house that she'd been with her first husband, and she is remarried, happily remarried, and they've moved and bought their own house. And that's a massive shift for her. But she hadn't been able to make those decisions because her time monster was still running on the old story. Don't think past today, just get through today. And she hadn't updated the story to say, look, it's been umpteen years. I'm now remarried and I'm happy, and I need to think past a year. I need to think past a day. I need to think past a month. So just think about the story you're telling your time monster, because the time monster will always be there trying to make sure you're okay, but it will be operating based on the story that you've told them. So what is your time story right now? Now, this lady has worked out that she needs to do these plans. But what was really interesting when we worked together yesterday is a year ago, we did a VIP day together. So we went out on the Bondo, which is great. And because she was learning to embed this new practice of doing 1-year planning, we actually physically walked through the year and helped her to pace it. So we walked at the pace that she wanted December to be. So it's going to be a much slower, and it's going to be some more methodic and just enjoying the moment. And then she wanted to come into January really ready to go. So we upped the pace physically as we walked through January. And then she'd come half term, I just want to slow down for a week and then keep going now, up, up, up again. And so we were doing this literally physically walking through the rhythm of her year in October. And she was reflecting yesterday and she said, I just felt amazing after I'd done that. I had the picture, but now I've physically embodied and embedded this new way of perceiving a year in advance. Now, the trouble was that when she came back this October, would have come back in October, it was a year since she did it last. And what she hadn't realised is obviously if you do a plan in October 2018 and it's for a year, that takes you to October 2019. And in January, you've now got 11th month plan. In February, you've got a 10-month. And what she hadn't consciously been aware of until yesterday is obviously her time frame had got smaller again over the year because she didn't have a new one-year plan at any point, which is why I've launched the Clarity and Change, a one-year plan you truly believe in, is we're going to have it running 4 times throughout the year, because at every time you need to update what your one-year plan is. Otherwise, the time frame that you're perceiving for your everyday decisions gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And as it gets narrower, we get into overwhelm because we're trying to fit a year's worth of dreams and hopes and aspirations into like a 1 week or 1 hour slot. So when you get the 1 year that you truly believe in and it's spaced out, then your time monster becomes a lot smaller. It becomes your cuddly friend that will just let you know, yeah, we're doing okay. I think about the honey monster now. It's like just plodding along. It's like, yeah, we've got this. Whereas if the thoughts you're trying to have are trying to be crammed into a very small time space, then your monster will start to feel trapped, feel that everything's out of control. You'll have no space to think. You'll even might find yourself with chest pains, with weight on your shoulder, your stomach churning, because everything's trying to fit into a very small space of time. And there's some things that you just physically cannot tick off and get that sense of satisfaction today. They have to be part of a bigger plan, and you have to get smaller bits that you can say, yes, I'm working my way towards that. So, Lorna, you've put, hi, trying to understand the time monster. Okay, well, we're on the call today, and thank you for joining me. So obviously, I want to say to everybody, time monster is my metaphor. And it came about when I asked myself the question, I think I was in overwhelm, I don't have any time, and I just said, so what kind of time is that time? And it's like, and I said, it came out, and my metaphor was, well, it's just like this big monster. And then what kind of monster is that monster? And then it became this bluey green monster. But yeah, it was sort of kind of founded on the Monster Inc. movie where you got Sully. But there were some other quirky bits about him that was different because it was based on my story and my metaphor, but it was very much influenced by that monster. And when I started to get a picture of where the monster was, I realised there was a couple of perspectives. There's one that was like, rah, like they're shouting at me, and I was like always scared about time. And when I started to slow things down and started just to really listen, I noticed as I got calmer, the time monster got smaller. And that's when I realised that really he's this like handheld kind of cuddly toy kind of time monster. And that actually he's there to warn me that time is precious. That I got a lovely quote actually at the funeral I went to on Wednesday that said, live like you're going to die tomorrow, but learn like you've got the rest of your life. And it was like, that's the time monster. It's like, this one's here, it's going, so come on, you gotta get on it. And I started to see, instead of it being a rah, it's like more like a cheerleader. Come on, we've got to make this happen today. Come on, let's do it. And then there's this other one that's going, and whatever you do today, just learn from it. Some of it will work, some of it won't work, and you can just learn what needs to work tomorrow. So there's this two contrasting characters. And actually, what happened as a result of actually getting curious about it is that rah one actually morphed into and became the cheerleader that some of you in the group will know, in the coaching group we're running, Clarity Wants to Change, is that it became the cheerleader. It was like, instead of being scared about time, it's going, come on. Because if you get rid of all your fear, you get rid of all the adrenaline, the motivators, and actually take action. If you live in that, oh, there's always tomorrow, you'll never get around to doing anything. Whereas if you remember, like, I want to live right now. This is my last day. I want to get up. I want to energize. I want to move. I want to take action. I want to do something. And sometimes the thing that you need to do is stop. rest, recharge. But you have to listen to that thought inside. What is it that's going on? What do you actually need right now? And when you know yourself really well, you'll know whether you're having to rest because it's part of the process, that you're, like say a marathon runner will stop at the end of the race and have a rest. So if you've worked really hard for a stint, you have a break. If you know you've been on a long break and just lacking motivation, lacking drive, then you'll know you're stuck in one of the parts of the process instead of moving through the process. So Lorna, you've got to have time but not using effectively and struggle with the why of my actions. So when you've got the time and you're using it, I know that you talked about it this when we did the call, because you're in the Clarity Compass and Change group, so I'm happy to go through this a bit more detail and we can stick this then in the group for everybody else to see. So when you, with a why, struggle with the why of your actions, I'd like you to think about what your kind of why, but the thing you said on the call this week was that when you do something, you feel better. So maybe it's not any more complicated than that when you take action, it makes you feel better. Maybe that's all there is to it. We've talked about the big circle and where the self part is. Sometimes we've got this story, the critic is telling us a story that's selfish. But if you do something that makes you feel better, if you do something that makes you shine, then we show up. Remember your confidence, shoulders back, eyes open, your heart's open, then actually that then impacts the other people around us. So if curling up on the bed under the duvet and having a good cry makes us feel better, do it. It's like there's no right or wrong about this behavior. It's whatever you're going to do, but check in with yourself. And I'm using your words because it's about you feeling better, Lorna. And other people have different motivators. But for me, it's like when I talk about my problems, this is what I call it in the confidence process, about chatting with purpose, is that I have discovered over the years that when I talk to release the pain, I'm doing it purposely. If I just keep talking about the problem over and over and over again, I actually don't feel better. I feel exhausted. I feel like I'm going around in circles. I feel drained. So it's like whatever you're doing, list all the things that you're doing, or list all the actions that you'd like to be happy. So all the things that you'd like to take action on. So I know you talked about going walking. You've talked about your business before. You've talked about your writing a book. All of it might be even doing the dishes or tidying up your room. It could be any action. Write down all of the actions first and foremost. And then notice when you take that action, then what happens. And keep going, and then what happens, then what happens. So it'll take you through those circles, the symbols that we had on the group coaching call, is what happens to you when you take that action, what happens to your family, what happens to a team, your support network, what happens to business, what happens to community, what happens to country, what happens to world. So when you take that one piece of action, what is the impact? And keep doing that with every list of action you've got, and start to see if there's any patterns. That's what you've got to get the detective magnifying glass out and get your hat on and start looking for the patterns. And when you start to see the pattern of what works and the pattern that doesn't work, two things will happen. You'll either find the motivation to do it because you'll see that it's going to have a positive impact on everybody, or you'll start to see what the time monster thinks the problem is. And it's not likely to be true necessarily, but you need to update the information. So if it thinks it's going to be bad for the family because it's going to take you away from them, for example, then check that story out and check whether that's true. And maybe you have to ask your family, or maybe you need to ask your team members or ask your potential clients. So that's in the group this week. I just needed some time out yesterday. I said I feel like I need 4 days, but by giving myself permission, asking and making sure it's okay with everybody else, I completely rested yesterday, even though I was running a session. In between, I wasn't trying to juggle anything else other than being present with the people that were there right there in that moment and being present with myself. It meant I come back today all recharged. So sometimes we have to ask other people. If we've got a time story, maybe it's not about us. We have to ask other people if that's going to work for them. You put, I know I'm in my head and what I want to achieve. I know in my head what I want to achieve. So one of the things that you said on the call was that you wanted to get it from your head to your heart. So I want you to know, when you know what's in your head, what happens just before it moves to your heart. Have a think about that. These videos, I've made a promise, will only be 15 minutes long. So what I'm going to suggest we do is I stop at 15 minutes and we can continue to explore this. And I'd like the other members of the group, you know, the clean language questions, what kind of, is there anything else about that? So any words that Lorna's put up, let's pull in together, and you can practice your listening skills, you can practice your questioning technique, you can ask Lorna about her experience of time monsters and why of the actions. That's what we're exploring together now. And then once we've explored it a little bit, let's give Lorna some time to actually explore this. Then once Lorna's got some clarity about what's happening for her, let's just share your experiences. What, you know, who's different to Lorna? What's your model like? So, you know, what's your why for taking action? Let's share models of why we take action. And ultimately, for me, I take action because it makes me feel good. I feel positive, but there's also an awareness that when I'm action taking, I can't keep doing action all the time. Sometimes the action that I need to take is inaction. I just need to rest. But what we can do is we can either be someone that keeps ourselves busy, and we exhaust ourselves, and then time monsters going, oh my gosh, can't keep that going. And other times, because we've had a fearful experience of being exhausted, we go into rest mode. It's almost like a bear, and we're hibernating for large periods of time. And sometimes we might have needed that. Maybe there's a bereavement, or there's a real loss, or a real massive change. But there comes a point where we have to recognise there's a seasonal change, and staying in hibernation for years and years isn't going to work. That, you know, we give ourselves a season or a period of time. You choose. Nobody can tell you what's right, but you can choose to say, right, on this date, that's when I'm going to come out of hibernation. On this date, that's when I'm going to start action. On this date or this time, it's when I'm going to stop action. So there's no right or wrong, but it's about you tuning into, and particularly listening to the time monster, to find out what works for you and what doesn't. And I get a sense that not taking action has now reached a point where it's not working for you. And what I'd like to be able to help you do is find the motivator now, so you don't have to repeat this pattern time and time again and get stuck in this loop of putting yourself down and criticizing yourself for not taking action, but actually go, just take action, do something. And I want you to notice today as well, Laura, it's really important that you notice this, that you are taking action already. You're on the group call, you're doing work, you're getting paid for work, you're on here now engaging. So you are also, notice what action you are taking. You've got up, you know, maybe not dressed yet, I don't know, but you would have got up and cleaned your teeth, you would have got dressed, you would have fed yourself something. They're all actions. So there's action you want to take in the future. Notice the action you are taking right here, right now. Give yourself credit, notice it, and then look at the action you have taken, reflect back further. And then when you've got those 3 time frames, it starts to balance your time monster out. It gives it more evidence of what's working. And if you want to do more of something, then yes, it's going to require a change. But you can do that, and you can decide how much, how often, and then set yourself what's a realistic goal for you to shift it. So I'm going to look forward to finding what happens between head and heart for you. I do have a series of calls to take today, so I won't necessarily be able to answer straight away today. But I can be on for 5 or 10 minutes after the call, the video. But please, the group, somebody else has just come on live as well. Please ask questions of Lorna. Let's be the support network, because when we ask questions of somebody else and we help them model out how they do time, how they go from, you know, inaction to action, in this case, why they take action, it will help us, because we can learn from other people when we listen to them without judgment. And once we've got some clarity from Lorna, let's all share our experiences and then ask each other questions. And I look forward over the next few days watching this transpire and to become a beautiful conversation and thread that will inspire all of us to either take a weekend of action or inaction, whatever works for you, but definitely with a tame time monster that's helping you to enjoy your life, do more of what you love. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Speak to you soon.